Jag kan nämna först att Najiba har arbetat för SAK ett antal år i Afghanistan. Först som programchef eller chef för ett kontor uppe i Takhar i norra Afghanistan och sen som administration manager in Kabul.
Yeah. Yes, in Kabul, yes, head of administration manager. It was the last position I had with SE.
So please give us an introduction, and it would be interesting to hear how you came to Sweden.
Sure.
Because you live in Alingsås
yes.
right now.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much again for inviting me here in this important event, and I'm very happy that see a lot of good people are attending the events. I came here on November 26 November last year, and I will tell you why I'm here. The international interventions in Afghanistan in 2001 created a unique opportunities for many women in Afghanistan to go to universities, to go to schools and get higher education. So I was one of those lucky women. In 2001, after the fall of Taliban, I got a scholarship and I went to Kyrgyzstan to study. After I finished my education, I returned back to Afghanistan and started my career in Afghanistan. I started my first job in Afghanistan in Takhar province. It is one of the provinces in the northeastern Afghanistan, a very conservative society. Very little acceptance for women, but it's still gradually developing. So it compared to big cities like Kabul and Mazar-e-Sharif or Herat, so this city was more conservative and traditional. I started my work there, and the first organizations that I joined, it was Aga Khan Foundation. So you might have heard about this organization. It is an international organization operating in many parts of the world. I started as a market development program coordinator. So at that capacity, I was working with men and women, and we were focusing on developing the capacities of women, business capacities of women in that organization. So they can, I'm focusing mainly on women in rural areas, the one who didn't have their own income. So as a result of the dependencies on the male members of the family, so they were experiencing different problems. So the program focusing on those women to make sure that they are self-reliant and they have a little bit of income to sustain themselves. I worked for 2 years at that organization and then started another job with another organization called GIZ. It was a German development cooperation. I worked, first I started with a sustainable development program and then joined another program. It is called Civil Peace Service. The Civil Peace Service, it was a program that was primarily focusing on developing, on preventing conflicts, and making sure that to promote non-violent conflict resolutions through promoting human rights, providing services on social, psychosocial counseling, and also we were also focusing on media in order to make sure that journalists are focusing on peace journalism, developing the capacities of journalism to report on peace journalism. And the program was also focusing on youth. So we were trying to build the capacities of young generations so they can be part of the promoting the human rights and civil peace. I was responsible for the northeastern part of the country, and focusing on Badakhshan and Takhar provinces. So mainly we were working with youths at this part of the country. But the program itself was focusing on in the north, in Kabul part. So it was a huge program. It is also an international program. I think almost 45 countries the program is operating.
Najiba, yeah. Sorry to interrupt you.
Sorry, no problem.
Did you see any change? Which changes did you see from the point when you started your work until the takeover by the Taliban when it comes to women's rights and development of your work?
Of course, it is difficult to say what kind of changes, tangible changes, because we know the situation in Afghanistan is different. It's totally different now. If we say yes, we have created a lot of changes at that time. So we were seeing that the program producing a lot of interest among the youths, and that is why it was a big concern among the conservative people there. So it was also producing a negative, because we were focusing on the human rights and the other parts. Anti-human rights activities groups, they were against the activities. But yes, there was a lot of interest. Youth was trying to promote human rights, promoting women's rights. They were engaging with different youths from different parts of the country. But of course, the program was small, so we were not covering the whole youths in the country, mainly focusing on very limited areas, mainly in the regions that there was compared to other provinces, safe and secure that to operate the programs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any example of the progress that you actually made?
Yes, the network was growing. I personally trained 18 activists who are training other youths. So we were training hundreds of youths in the regions. So they were active at universities, they were active at the school, and they were active when there was a violation of the women or human rights. So they were taking sides, they were demonstrating, they were promoting it. So yeah. they were trying to stop advocate for the rights of.
Must have been nice to see.
Yeah,
that.
Yeah. So yes, it was good, and the program was producing results. Yep. Yeah. So after that, I joined ACA. After that, after 2 years for this program, when I received a lot of threats, because I was leading the program, and I decided together with the family, with Sanjar, that I should. This is the time that I have to leave the lead for the youths, and I I needed to join another organization. Somewhere that is more protection for me, because as I said, Takhar was a more conservative society, so it was more exposure would increase the risk for me. So I had to leave, and I joined the.
So you left because of the risk.
Because of the risk.
And that was before.
It was before yes, it was 2016.
Yes.
2016.
So even before the takeover of the Taliban, you felt the risk. It was not,
yes, it was before, because it is not easy in Afghanistan when you work in the human rights sector. So a lot of conservative.
So even then,
still they're not accepting these concepts, or still for them are new, and they are not happy.
Can you say something about the impact of SCA in that conservative region? Yes,
the good thing about SCA was a development organization. So not only SCA, but most of the development organizations in Afghanistan, they are in the safe side. So not a lot of criticism. But they say yes, the acceptance was higher. And even at that time, during in recent years, especially 2010 and 2019, so majority of the provinces were under the direct control of Taliban. Most of the regions, most of the districts, but the still SCA was operating at that regions. Of course, because we were, as you talked about the programs, the SCA was delivering education, disability, and rural development. So nothing in conflict with their ideologies. So we are not. Yes, of course, it was a right-based organizations, but we are not directly teaching human rights as I did in my previous job. So that is why not a lot of criticism. So there was no any issue on the work of SCA.
So now we have a new situation in the country. What do you hear? What can you say about the women's situation in Afghanistan for the time being?
The situation of women is, of course, terrible. It is heartbreaking, and it is all of us are knowing, following the news, and we see. And since I am still getting a lot of information, it is not only about the information that we receive from media. For example, women are prohibited to attend jobs, to go to jobs, or they are prohibited to attend the schools. But this is a general situation of women in Afghanistan has changed. Even before the Taliban take over, according to the statistics, 70% of women in Afghanistan were experiencing human rights abuses. They were experiencing
abuses,
violence.
Like violence.
Violence, yes. So now imagine what would happen with a lot of restrictions on women, with the new interpretations of women rights by Taliban. So the situation might be really, really worse, and I'm concerned about that, because now that time we had even with the law on elimination of violence against women. Women were experiencing a lot of problems, but now there is no law, and there is no protection for women. So you can imagine what will happen if a woman face violence, and where should she approach to ask justice for herself. Yeah. So the situation is not only about work and school. So the problem of women in Afghanistan is much deeper and complex.
Oh, it's very good that you point that out. And what do you hear from friends, former colleagues in Afghanistan about the situation for women?
Yes, I'm getting a lot of information, because now I'm working with the human rights organizations here
in Sweden.
In Sweden, yes, yeah. But this is an Australian-based organization. So I work remotely, so we get a lot of information about women, a lot of information, and this information that we never have access to it, because media in Afghanistan is not working anymore. Taliban put a very strict rules, so nobody can talk about anything against Taliban. So the information is limited, very limited. So only what we get through media, it is maybe the 1% of the violations that we receive. It is really bad. Women are struggling because they don't have access to financial supports. They lost their jobs, and especially those women with no men at their who can work for them, yeah. Because so many women lost their husbands, brothers in the war during the last 20 years. A lot of them don't have any male member, and a lot of them their husbands were in employment at that time. So they were the only breadwinner in the family. So they don't have any job. Only limited organizations like ACA or maybe OAHON or some other international organizations who are providing very few job opportunities, and it is not enough for all of them. Yeah. So it is terrible. It is terrible.
I saw a figure that about 80% of all female journalists left their work.
Yes.
So is it possible for women to do more qualified duties in Afghanistan?
Can you repeat the question?
Is it possible for Afghan women in Afghanistan to have more qualified positions today in Afghanistan, like being a journalist or?
Of course not. Most of the educated people are out of the country. So, for example, I worked with GIZ. GIZ evacuated all the staff who worked since 2019 with the organization. So all of those qualified people are out of the country. The same with many other organizations who took responsibilities for their staff, and they evacuated them. UN agencies or other organizations. Yes, it is. There are some still educated people, but there is no work for them. No. There is no work. No. So how can they work? Only few employment opportunities within very limited number of organizations.
Do we have many women staying at home, hiding just in case? They have a fear to go out, and if they have a work, they don't dare going there?
Yes, some the women from the human rights communities, of course, they cannot dare to go outside because they are afraid of their activities they did in the past. So they were parts of a human rights organization, so they didn't go out. But some of other women they don't have anybody at home to accompany them, because as a woman, you're not allowed to go outside if you don't have any mahram with you. How can I find somebody all the time to accompany me to somewhere? So you cannot travel, you cannot get out of the house without somebody accompanying. Otherwise, you face violence. Taliban will beat you on the street. So nobody is daring to go outside. Yeah. Everybody is just sitting at home.
Yeah. Förlåt? Ja. Okej. Frågor, do you have any questions from the audience? You're welcome to ask Najiba. Yes, please.
Du hade ju en genomgång av att det på landsbygden finns på landsbygden redogjorde du för att där fanns det ju folk som supportas av SAK och så, som utbildar flickor till lärare och så vidare. Va? Hur ser situationen ut i Kabul och andra städer så här? Alltså talibanerna måste ju anse att det är viktigt att folk i städerna får sjukvård och utbildning och så här vidare. Ligger allt det nere nu alltså?
The question is, if I understand you correctly, the difference between the countryside and the cities when it comes to health and also education. How does it work? Do people have health facilities in the countryside and in the cities? Is it any difference?
Of course, there is a lot of difference. It is totally different when you live in a city or when you live in a very rural areas. We still don't have health facilities in rural areas. In some of the areas, it is still women are suffering. In general, all people, but mostly women are suffering because there is no health facility, so they have to travel a very long way, 2 or 3 hours in the rough street without any means of transportations, and women lose life, children lose their children. So it is terrible. It was terrible even before the Taliban take over, because still there was a lot of issues and a lot of work to do. And this is, I don't know what will happen now, because a lot of organizations stopped working, and there is no supports are not reaching to those people. It is not like cities. Yes, cities still we have opportunities. If the government health care system is not operating, but still there are some private healthcare services that people can buy it. But in rural areas, you cannot see neither the government nor the private ones. And people in the rural areas, of course, they cannot afford, since they are poor and they don't have also.
So the situation is worsening more in the rural areas than in the cities.
Much more worse than the cities. Yes. Yeah.
I have a question. This is a very dark. So. What will we do then? Just sit down and keep...
No.
And what can we do in Sweden?
Yeah, that is why we are here, because we feel responsibilities. This is our moral responsibility to do something. Since I'm here, to be honest, I really don't feel... It is true that I feel safe, but I feel a lot of obligations, that we have to do something for people, and our hands are closed and we cannot do anything. So we have to do it. The sufferings that people are experiencing in Afghanistan, it is terrible. For me, that I see these sufferings and I experience, and I just it is heartbreaking. So we have to raise awareness among the general people, not only in Sweden, but in the world, and I am doing it. It is not the only event that I'm attending here. And we have to put a lot of public pressures on the government of Sweden and the governments of the world, that not to leave people of Afghanistan alone, especially the women that are half of the population in Afghanistan, and they are suffering. And I hope that these pressures can awaken the governments, the international communities once again, not to let Afghanistan alone. I know that now the problem, the issues in Ukraine is also taking a lot of attention. I understand that this is people there also suffering, but we should not forget Afghanistan, because the problem, if it is not coming in the front lines, it doesn't mean there's a problem in Afghanistan is resolved. The problems are there, and it is much, much deeper than ever before.
We see pictures and we get reports of women demonstrating in the streets of Kabul and other cities. What are the future possibilities to change something? What do you say about their activities? Could that have any effect?
To be honest, these women are the bravest women in Afghanistan. It is different. It is different. They are taking a very high risk and going to the streets and demonstrating. It is even the numbers are very limited, because not many women can do that. But their voices are stopped. You know, most of them are still in prison. They are disappeared. Still, Taliban doesn't confess that they have done it. Some of them are released, and they are not raising their voice against, because I don't know what happened. We don't get, even in the human rights communities, we don't get a lot of information because they are not. There is no information available. But this is terrible. So they are doing every possible things to shut up people, not to talk about these issues. And but we have to understand that these things are happening. These are happening. They are not letting anyone who talks against Taliban's rule.
Nayat, you have a question?
One more question, sorry. Nej, jag undrar, vad jag förstod så var det ju ni kritiska, eller du kritisk till det här att inställningen att man inte ska prata med talibanerna. Och det kan jag förstå, för att man måste ju ändå kommunicera. Men om jag har förstått det hela rätt, så är det så att Svenska Afghanistan-kommittén får ändå fortsatt SIDA-bidrag och finansieras till största delen av det. Och som jag tolkade var i alla fall att det skulle kunna vara en väg att ge mer via er som finns där på plats ute. Det har ni inte märkt någonting av, eller?
Är det här det är mer en fråga till mig, eller?
Ja, det kanske är det.
Jag gör det.
I will take it in Swedish. Jag jobbar ju på SAG i Stockholm. Och det här är också lite svar på din fråga som du frågade innan. Alltså SAG har ju funnits i 40 år och vi fortsätter finnas i Afghanistan. Vi har fått mer finansiellt stöd av SIDA också. Precis, vi fick ju 56 miljoner i november. Och vi har utökat vår hälsoverksamhet i Nuristan till exempel. Vi har tagit över en annan provins också där vi har vår hälsoverksamhet. Så nu har vi verksamhet i 17 eller 18 provinser ute i landet. Så vi fortsätter vår utbildningsverksamhet, hälsoverksamhet, landsbygdsutveckling och mycket mera. Vi har också utökat vår personal eftersom det finns större behov just nu. Så det största problemet har varit att överföra pengar till Afghanistan. Alltså att det är svårt att transferera, precis för att man har sanktionerat Afghanistan från USAs sida. Och det har varit väldigt svårt att föra över pengar. Vi har nu fått hjälp av FN så att vi har budget fram till maj. Att vi kan betala ut löner och vi kan bedriva vår verksamhet. Men som Najiba sa, det generellt är väldigt svårt i landet. Men vår verksamhet, vi fortsätter för att vi har väldigt tajt relation med lokalsamhällen. Och de i sin tur har en samtal med talibanerna och därför har vi kunnat liksom öppna vår verksamhet. Även skolorna för våra flickor som är över årskurs 12 eller 6, som är liksom över 12 år gamla, de har också gått i skolan sedan oktober. Så på det sättet har vi kunnat öppna vår verksamhet.
Ja, exakt. Och det tycker jag man kan komma ihåg att Svenska Afghanistan-kommittén, vi har faktiskt haft alla våra verksamheter igång. Andra organisationer har fått stänga ner och på många håll har inte flickorna fått komma tillbaka till skolan. Men vi har lyckats med det. Och det är precis som Enayat säger, tack vare vår relation med lokalsamhället, som i sin tur har kunnat sätta press på talibaner, lokala ledare, så har det gått.
Ja, men det betyder i alla fall att ni har fått ökad hjälp via SID.
Ja.
Men det är fortfarande så att ni tycker att vi borde påverka vår regering att också kommunicera med talibanerna för att ge även...
Man kan säga två saker. Ja. Nej, men man kan säga det finns en tendens, har funnits en tendens att regeringar, stater har velat flytta över sitt bistånd, pengarna från liksom, statshjälp till organisationer som sak. Och det kan man väl göra. Det är bara det att vi har ju inte varit dimensionerade för att ta emot alltså, så mycket mer stöd. Alltså det tar ju tid att ställa om och hantera alla dessa mer pengar också. Även om det är ett bra syfte, så är det inte bara att göra så där, knäppa med fingrarna, utan behoven finns ju där idag.
Ja, tack, jättebra. Nu springer jag och hämtar bilen, tror jag.
Ja, det är lugnt, Kajsa. Det är lugnt.
Nu kör jag in den på gården så ni hinner med tåget.
Vi har 1 minut kvar. Finns det någon anslutning till det du sa om det här? Men finns det ingen verksamhet kvar i städerna?
Nej, väldigt lite. Nej. Det är ett strategiskt val. Det är andra organisationer som finns i städer, och vi har sett att behoven är störst ute på landsbygden. Det är där behoven är störst, och det är kanske också där man får störst effekt på utvecklingsarbetet. Att det här jag pratar om, att få igång hjulen, ekonomin och få liksom en bättre utveckling för hela landet, så är det ett strategiskt val. Men det betyder ju inte att det finns andra organisationer också.
Okay, 2 more questions.
Yes.
Mm. Ja, men nu ställer jag en fråga här. Tack så mycket. Ja, och då så tänker jag så här, hur ser du på framtiden? Det är 75% som bor på landsbygden, och där uppfattar jag att talibanerna har haft ett väldigt starkt stöd. Har du någon uppfattning av att stödet är lika starkt eller minskar, och vad kan man göra för att det ska minska?
Ska du översätta?
The question is 75% of the Afghan population living in rural areas, and the support has been quite big for the Taliban. How is it now in the countryside, in rural areas? How is the support for the Taliban? Is it increased or decreased? And what we can do to decrease support for Taliban?
It is really difficult to say that the 70% of the people supports Taliban. Yes, mostly in rural areas, they had the support of the people there. But what to decrease, I think it's a very complex questions. Yes, it's a very complex questions, because if you don't know what are the reasons, one of the reasons that most of the people supported Taliban is it was a widespread corruption in the government. The government of Afghanistan unfortunately failed to win the trust of all people in Afghanistan, especially those who were living in the rural areas. After 20 years of investment, foreign investment in Afghanistan with billions of dollars, still we cannot say one of the districts that is fully developed and there is everything, healthcare, education, and everything. So you see the same situation as it was before. So it's still majority of people don't have access to the education. It's still majority of people don't have access to healthcare services, and it's still a majority of people are suffering from lack of economic opportunities. So it was the reason that government of Afghanistan failed, because they didn't use the money, foreign aid, efficiently helping the people of Afghanistan. They were building the money for themselves. All of the money went to the parliamentarian, government officials. So it was a group of mafia who was taking the whole money, who entered to Afghanistan. So, and this was one of the biggest mistake. Unfortunately, that a lot of money went to Afghanistan without establishing a proper infrastructure, how to control the money spent. And we didn't make sure, I mean, the international communities, that how this money is spent and who is distributing the money, who are the people who are spending the money. So, and these are the problem caused that so many people supported Taliban. And now we are facing the same question. So if again the humanitarian supports are going to Afghanistan, we need to make sure that how this money is going, who is the people who decides on this money is spent in Afghanistan. This is very, very important, because Afghanistan should not repeat the same mistake as it did in the past.
Thank you. One last question, and then we have to thank Najiba, because we have a train to Alingsås and Stockholm. So, last question.
Ja, jag har egentligen två frågor, men den första, det var anknytning till din där alltså. Sjukvården i de större städerna, den måste ju också ha haft många kvinnliga medarbetare. Och då frågan, vad har hänt där så att säga? Vad det här med att kvinnorna inte längre kan arbeta utanför hemmet. Hur har det påverkat sjukvården i de stora städerna? De största sjukhusen som finns i Afghanistan borde ha påverkats väldigt negativt, om jag förstått det hela rätt. Det var min första fråga.
Alltså, om jag ska svara det kort så finns de. The question was about the women working in health centers and hospitals. How is it now? I think the women are still working in the health services. It is allowed by Taliban. It is decreased, but we see, like in nurses, doctors who are still working in hospitals and clinics. It decreased, but still, some clinics who is budget, they're working. If you have other answer?
No. The answer is the same. They are working. Healthcare staff are allowed to work, but universities are closed. So if you're not producing any other doctor, so what will happen in the future? We are not talking about today. We have to invest for our futures.
Min andra fråga, det gäller det här mycket märkliga att en stat förbehåller sig rätten att stjäla en annan stats valutareserv för att dela ut den till sina egna medborgare. Det är alltså en oerhört märklig sak, och då undrar man, är det ingen som reagerar på det? Vad man än tycker om talibaner, men Afghanistan har en valutareserv som tillhör Afghanistan. Och den har alltså tagits, den del av den som ligger då i USA har tagits av USA för att delas ut till amerikanska medborgare. Det är fullständigt absurt. Finns det ingen som reagerar på det?
Ja, alldeles för få. Det här har ju inte det har kommit reaktioner, men mera debattörer bland organisationer som arbetar med frågan. Men i Sverige har det varit väldigt lite fokus kring det. Efter Sverige har inte varit delaktig i det här, utan det är USA och några andra europeiska länder. Men jag håller med det, förvånansvärt lite diskussion kring det här. En anledning är väl det som händer i Ukraina just nu. Fokus är på någonting annat. Men det är vissa som skriver om det, vissa som reagerar. Men jag håller med, det är fullständigt galet, helt absurt att stjäla en statskassa och dela ut till sina egna. Speciellt världens rikaste land som tar statskassan från ett av världens fattigaste länder. Så.